Oh, you're back. The Roosevelt rolled out his New Deal policies in two major waves, and what we're going to talk about first up is the first wave or the first New Deal. Let's be. You can read all about the first New Deal in your own U.S. history textbook or in the OpenStax textbook, and be sure you do. It's a bit of an alphabet soup. It's known as Roosevelt's policies and the new agencies he's founded all come to be known by a series of initials: the CCC, the NRA, the TVA, the GDMF, the WTF, whatever they are, and they can be tough to keep track of. The OpenStax textbook has a handy chart. Other U.S. history textbooks also do too. If you're currently in a high school U.S. history class, your teacher has probably made a PowerPoint that has a chart just like that. But just in case you don't, at the end of this video, I will simply put the OpenStax chart on the screen, and you can take screenshots. In the meantime, all I want to do is walk you through what's up next in the playlist and let the textbook and the playlist speak for themselves. So this is a quick rundown of what's coming up in the playlist. First up, we'll have from Patrick Hayes comes an overview of FDR's first New Deal. Then you'll hear just from PBS just a 1-minute clip of Roosevelt's first fireside chat. He made this method of communicating with the American people famous, as he would sit down by the fire and broadcast over radio, sharing his thoughts and trying to get the American people on board with the substantial changes that he was trying to make. A particularly momentous period in Roosevelt's presidency was his first 100 days. He was committed to making substantial changes to alleviate the suffering of the Great Depression within his first 100 days of presidency. And ever since that time, we have continued to pay special attention to each president's first 100 days. So we'll take a look at everything that Cowboy Matthew will help you take a look at everything that Franklin Roosevelt accomplished in his first 100 days. Among the things he created as part of the New Deal was the FDIC. And this next video will tell you all about the FDIC. Of all the initials in the alphabet soup, this is one that you should be happy exists, because this is an insurance policy from the government, which says that if you invest your money in a bank and the bank goes out of business, your money, at least a substantial portion of your money, is protected. Part of what happened in the Depression is that when the banks went under, if you had $10,000 in the bank or $10 in the bank and the bank went out of business, you just didn't have $10 anymore. Millions of people lost their entire life savings that way. And the FDIC was one of Roosevelt's creations to prevent that from happening again. Next up, you see the alphabet soup has begun. Reading through history will tell you about the Civilian Conservation Corps, a jobs program getting people back to work by creating important programs and things that needed to be done around communities, around states, and around the country. After that, infographic animated history will tell you all about the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933 and what Roosevelt tried to do to help the suffering farmers. Here's a spoiler alert. Not every farmer was remotely pleased with what Roosevelt did. Part of the issue is his farm reforms seem to help huge multimillionaire farm corporations much more than the average small family farmer, much less sharecroppers or tenant farmers. They continue to suffer, and it even got worse for them. But part of Roosevelt's policy to keep the price of food up so that farmers could draw a profit
was the destruction of tons and tons and tons of perfectly good food. A lot of people didn't like that. This was, one could argue that it was necessary. Roosevelt sure argued it was necessary. He wasn't just playing a cruel joke on people, but the visual of people starving and small family farmers, tenant farmers, sharecroppers still broke, and perfectly good food going to waste, that infuriated a lot of people. One group that tried to resist was the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. Tenant Farmers Union, I should emphasize tenant farmers. Someday I'll learn how to speak. And you'll see a bit about them, and then you'll hear one of the ballads inspired by their struggle, called "Roll the Union On." Next up, we'll hear all about the NRA. You hear those initials today, and you may think National Rifle Association. This is a different NRA. This is the National Recovery Administration. You'll see an original promo produced in 1933 for the NRA, and notice how much attention is paid to the singular figure and personality of President Roosevelt in this promo. And then you'll hear more about the NRA from Chris Shoulders. You'll see a bit about labor disputes and strikes. There's a lot of that going on. This is just some archival footage. You can read more about it in the text. And then perhaps one of the most successful parts of the first New Deal was the Tennessee Valley Authority, a public works program in the South, which put many people to work, and which continues even to this day. The next thing you'll see in this video, before we move forward in the playlist, is the chart of all the alphabet soup from the OpenStax textbook. Like I said, you can access the chart yourself in that textbook, or your own chart, or your teachers probably have PowerPoints. There's probably a million better ways to access a chart in one place of these organizations, but just in case you don't have them, I'm going to provide it to you. If you do have them and don't want to keep watching, just go ahead and skip on to the next video on the first New Deal, and I'll be back with you after we talk Tennessee Valley Authority.